Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. I think we have a special episode today. This is going to be called Astral Projection to the Akashic Records. This has been something that people have been asking me if I had visited for years, and each time I'd have to tell them no. For those of you who aren't quite sure what the Akashic Records are, it is a universal record storehouse that stores the universal records. It's somewhere on the higher astral or on the mental plane. It depends who you ask. And these records store the past and the present, but they also store the future, which is particularly interesting. And keep in mind, it's not just Earth, it's the entire universe. And most particularly, whenever there's an intelligence involved, an animal self awareness to some extent, the records are definitely kept on those types of life forms and planets. Although I don't pretend to know the entire scope, I don't know that anyone knows the entire scope of the records. So, at any rate, earlier this week, I decided after I left my body to shoot for the Akashic Records. Well, I had a moment of unconsciousness, and I materialized in what looked like an enormous library. And I was in a heap on the floor. I got up, and immediately there was, I'd say, someone who looked 70, 80-ish, very old, but well dressed, and he addressed me with a British accent, which I thought was a nice touch. He welcomed me by name to the Akashic Records and said that a tour had been arranged for me by my friend. And as soon as he said that, the whole angel friend kicked in. So I had to smile at that. I said, well, lead away. So we started walking through this enormous library, and there was these beautiful, enormous bookcases stuffed with books from all and scrolls from all ages, and it looked like it was made from the finest mahogany. Now, of course, all of this was a conventionalization for my benefit, because that's what they do when people from different places visit. To see the actual pure Akashic Records would probably be very disorienting. But one curious thing that I saw as I was walking along with my British guide was I looked up and there was all of these computer punch cards flying about back and forth. And I asked my British guide, what's the deal with these punch cards? And he looked at me and he said, well, this is part of what you know to be a conventionalization. So we wanted to demonstrate, what you know as far as information storage. I said, wait a minute. I haven't seen a computer punch card in 40 of our Earth years. So he was puzzled for a second, and it looked like he was kind of looking something up in his mind. And then suddenly we had these gigantic billions and billions overhead of fiber optic filaments. And he said, well, is this a little bit more familiar as an information storage device? I said, well, you're a lot closer now, thanks. So I just accepted that, and we continued to walk, and he guided me around, and there was many different races that were there. I saw a few Earth people, but they seemed to come from a wide variety of eras on Earth. I asked him if he saw a lot of people from my time frame. He said there were some, but there was so many visitors from so many other planets that it was hard to actually keep track. And at the same time, I think he was kind of thinking that who cares? But I started thinking that, well, this is great, but can I access some of these records myself? He said, of course. He sat me down at this beautiful mahogany desk. I really love mahogany, so I think that's why they went there. And immediately there was this wide array of fiber optic filaments in front of me, all over the desk. Some thicker, some thinner. Some actually looked like huge cables, while others looked like teeny little spider filaments. And I said, okay, thanks. How do I do this? He said, well, think exactly what you want to see, and then grab the filament that seems the best for you. So what came to mind is, okay, I'd like to see the development of intelligent life on an alien planet. And I reached out and I grabbed one of the filaments. Instantly, I found myself hovering above a shallow sea over this planet that had two moons in the sky. And there I saw some squid-like creatures. And they were under attack by this, I guess I could say maybe a barracuda type creature. It just seemed to be all teeth. And they had very little defense against this creature. And as the ages rolled by and I could see the evolution speeding up, gradually these octopus type creatures gained more intelligence. They became craftier. They were better at hiding. They would eventually grab shells and things that looked like coral and sharpen them, turn them into knives, so that when these creatures would appear to hunt them, they would group together and stab at these predators, and many times successfully fending them off. As the eons rolled by, they began to go upon the shore to lay their eggs. As the eons went by, the eggs became capable of going further and further away from the seabed and from onto dry land. The octopus went on to dry land as well. They started to develop limbs and a hard shell. Their civilization continued to develop, and they started establishing little colonies, and they built like little mud type huts in this marshy type area and had themselves a nice little primitive civilization, probably somewhere on par with Earth's simple Stone Age. And so I let go of that particular filament, and I found that extremely interesting. Then I decided, okay, I want to see the formation of the solar system, of the solar system, our solar system. And immediately I saw this huge gas cloud that exploded. And as the eons rolled by, the sun took its shape, but the planets were extremely unfamiliar to me. Up close, there was these huge rocky planets that were circling the sun very close by. And then as I watched, Jupiter and then Saturn started heading inwards, closer and closer to the sun. And they caused an enormous gravitational disruption that broke up and then threw many of these huge rocky planets into the sun. And then after that happened, there was like a slingshot type of action that occurred. And Jupiter and Saturn headed back out again to the orbits where we now find them. I then saw that what was left coalesced into the familiar planets that we know today. Mercury, Venus, Earth. Early on, I saw Venus had oceans and simple life. Mars also had an ocean. And then, of course, the young Earth started developing as well. And that's when I stopped that particular experience and let that go. The next idea to pop into my head was to visit the Earth 500 million years ago. And I really wanted to be involved with this one. So it felt like I was suddenly walking on dry land that looked pretty dead to me and looking towards an ocean. So I started walking towards the ocean's edge, and on some rocks I saw moss type lichens stuck to them, right by the shore. And I actually walked for a bit and I saw a dead fish, which was very simplistic, a very, very primitive type fish, and a trilobite or two, which was very interesting. Those things went extinct a long time ago. I looked up in the sky, and the moon looked a lot larger in the sky than it does today. I knew that if I dove into the ocean, I probably could see a lot more life, but I kind of was interested in exploring some other things in the Akashic Library, and I didn't know how much longer this was going to last. So I let that fiber optic cable go, and I came back to the library again. I started thinking what I could do next. Out of nowhere, I started thinking about the Kennedy assassination. Now, I know that's been a big concern for a lot of folks over the years. I haven't really thought too much about it myself. I've always kind of thought it was just Oswald, and that there was just a lot of folks making up conspiracy stories because it seemed kind of fun for him and kind of neat, and I didn't really believe it. But I said, well, let me investigate the whole, John F. Kennedy assassination. I grabbed the fiber optic filament. Instantly, I was in this motel room. It was very humid. It was a very cheap type motel. And in that room, there were two men. One, I could tell his thoughts were he worked for the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. And then there was another gentleman there who I could tell was very powerful, but he didn't have a real good sense of morality. All he did was hunger for power. And I got the name Marcello. And he evidently was conspiring with this CIA officer, and they were talking about assassinating the President of the United States and how they could make that happen. The CIA offered to provide all of the necessary intelligence about the President's movements, and they were discussing who should provide the sharpshooters. There'd be at least two. The CIA obviously had some good people, but the mafia claimed they had some too. And they were unsure as to who was going to do that. For sure, this individual, Marcello, was saying that he had someone in mind who could take out the patsy. And that was the CIA's job, to find a patsy. And I think that's where Oswald came in. He was to be the fall guy. And the mob was to make sure that he didn't get a chance to talk. And they knew this club owner who had been associated with the Chicago outfit as kind of an outlier, but he had terminal cancer and he knew it. And he also owed the mob a lot of money, and he was worried about his family. So they said they could get him to take out the patsy so that he wouldn't talk. So I was just shocked by all of this because, as I said, I never paid a lot of attention to this, and when I did, I thought it was just Oswald acting alone. So, take that, as you like. It was a heck of a surprise to me. The next thing I decided to do was check out on this whole plague thing that we're currently stuck with. Now, keep in mind that I don't personally subscribe to the whole conspiracy theory on this thing either. But I tried to keep an open mind, and I grabbed the filament. And instantly I found myself hovering over this lab in China. And I don't speak Chinese, but the thoughts that I got was that there was a biowarfare experiment. The Chinese were trying to develop a virus, an organism that could be easily transmitted and that would be fairly deadly, but that they could control it, and then they could then use it as a bio weapon. Something happened, something went wrong, it got released, and they tried to clamp it down, and try to keep it secret, but it ended up just escaping and going throughout the world. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to believe something like that, but that's what I got when I investigated that whole thing. Um, the next thing I checked out was my own past lives, and there was a lot of personal stuff involved there, and I'm not going to get into a lot of details. I can tell you that I did have some lifetimes as a soldier. I had some lifetimes as various priests and religions, and I had past experience with astral projection. So perhaps that's where some of the information that I seem to have has come from. Finally, I decided to look into the near future of Earth here, and most particularly the next 10 years, because I usually don't spend a lot of time doing that in the astral because I just don't have time to spend when you're that close to the present. Um, and what I saw was very volatile. The next 10 years are going to be very volatile. Our lives in 2030 will be substantially different than they are right now. There's going to be some good advances, but there's going to be more problems. I can't get into specifics because I was told that I could share all I want about the past and alien planets, but I can't share the future because if I do, I'll be banned from ever going back to the Akashic Records, and I want to go back there. So I can only talk about generalities. There's going to be, more and fiercer storms. There's going to be more political unrest, and this really upset me. And there will be a vaccine or vaccines actually for this current plague. But one of the problems is going to be that a lot of people aren't going to take the vaccine. So it's going to hang around longer than it needs to. And it's going to continue to be a factor in our lives for a lot longer than we suspect. I know everybody is kind of thinking, and I was kind of thinking that, in 2021 we can all get vaccinated, this will go away, we can stop wearing masks. But that's not what I saw. So that's probably about all the details I can get into on this particular subject. I started feeling like I was going to be called back to my body, so I looked up and there was my British guide. And I asked him about the records. I said, how long have they been kept? And he told me that they'd always been kept. And then I tried to ask him, well, is our universe cyclic? Is this going to happen again and again? Because that was kind of a pet theory of mine. And he said that in the most simplistic answer that he could give, that everything that has happened and will happen again. I tried to ask for some more details, but he said that it just wasn't possible at my level of intelligence to get into any further detail. After that he said, well, please don't be offended by that. Your friend told me that if I said that, you'd be offended. And I said, well, no, I'm not offended at all. He kind of smirked. And so we kind of left it at that. So that was my visit to the Akashic Records. It was certainly very illuminating. I'm glad I finally got there because it's been, like I said, it's been something that people have been asking me about over the years, and I just never got there, just never thought about going. But I will go in again in the future because it was a very interesting resource, and it was a nice way to access information without having to go through a complete astral projection journey each time. So, it is pretty beneficial from that standpoint. And if you're an astral projector, I encourage you to go and see what you see. I imagine you'll probably see something a little different than what I saw because conventionalizations, they try to create what you expect to see, what you'll be comfortable with. So who knows? Maybe your Akashic Records will be a little bungalow at a beach somewhere in Bali. I don't know, with a computer screen. Who knows? At any rate, that was the trip. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, why don't you go ahead and like it, share it with those of like mind, subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have subscribed, hit that bell button and leave me a comment or a question, and I'll do my best to answer it. And as always, I'm Rick, and I'll see you on the astral plane.